Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Hello, dear friends. Welcome once again to Kardec Radio 24/7, always nourishing our souls. Hello, dear sunshine.
Hello, dear Carol.
Thank you for shining through as you always do. And today we are going to be further enlightened by the spirit doctor Andrea Lewis's narrative in this life-changing book entitled Between Heaven and Earth. In this book, we have living examples of how the interactions between worlds take place. And we have already learned that the power of one single prayer can indeed remove mountains. And we also learned that our mental landscape can nourish our souls, taking us closer to God or helping us, leading us to descend to the abyss of obsession. So today we are going to learn more about the process of obsession as a result of the trials and expiations that this group of spirits are intertwined in. And our beautiful sunshine is going to now offer a summary for us of chapter 4 entitled A Pathway of Trials. And hello, dear Rihanna, before we begin, and hello, Donna Verducci.
Hello, Rihanna. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you. And thank you, Donna, for joining as well. So today we're finding ourselves in chapter 4, which we find on page 27 in this beautiful book. And as you remember, last time we ended that Minister Clarencio's team, that includes Andre Luiz, find themselves at Zulmira's house, and Zulmira is now asleep. And we are privy to seeing the drama unfold, the drama of obsession between Evelina, who is Evelina's mother, and Zulmira, who is the second wife of Evelina's father, who is still incarnated. So Odila is discarnated and Zulmira is incarnated. She is the stepmother of Evelina. And Odila and Zulmira have an obsessive relationship. So we're finding Zulmira being tormented by Odila. And Odila is saying, "What have you done to my son?" Because we may remember that Odila's son, which is Evelina's little brother, died in the ocean not prematurely, that's scratching that, as a young child. While Zulmira was supposed to watch him. And so Odila is now accusing Zulmira of being a murderer. She says, "What did you do to my son? Murderer, murderer, murderer." And she says, "I'm going to wreck your life, Zulmira. You're not going to rob me of Amaro's love." Now, Amaro is Evelina's father, and Amaro is Odila's first husband, and now Zulmira's second husband. So we're already seeing and also reminding ourselves that Odila is incredibly jealous of Zulmira. And Zulmira, in turn, which we're learning now in this chapter, has been incredibly jealous of little What was his name? Julio, right?
Julio, yes, Julio.
Because Amaro and Julio had a very tight relationship. So Zulmira is trying to escape Odila and runs outside the house in spirit. Let us remember she's sleeping. And they're headed both. Of course, Odila is on her heels, so to speak. And they're rushing towards the beach. And it was on the beach that Julio was washed away by a wave, while Zulmira again was supposed to watch. And Hilario, who is part of the team observing this whole drama, and he's a spirit. He's part of Clarencio's team with Andre Luiz as well, is saying, why does Zulmira experience such a trial if she isn't the one who actually killed Julio? Because we've learned last time in the chapter that Julio actually was supposed to die young. So we're wondering too, so how come Odila and Zulmira, or in other words, Zulmira is suffering so deeply when she was actually not per se the murderer? And so then the Minister Clarencio, helps us to understand. So he says that since Zulmira was insanely jealous of little Julio, she ardently longed for this little kid to die. And now we're seeing unfolding, and we're just summarizing, it's pretty much 2 pages long, the description of what happened, of how much Zulmira was envisioning Julio being dead. And all because of jealousy, because she felt not loved enough, so to speak, by her husband Amaro, only because she observed this really sweet connection between Amaro and his son Julio. He would come home from work and read to him and just be a very attentive father. And of course, we're listening to this because we want to make sure that we won't ever fall into this trap of jealousy, because in this book, we're seeing what jealousy can really do, the harm, the damage, the hardship we're creating for others and our own selves. Again, she's jealous of a little child. So she started longing for this little boy to be dead. And one day was the day the family was headed to the beach. And as an aside, we want to say that Evelina's relationship to her father, Amaro, was not as threatening to Zulmira, because Evelina was more reserved. She was already older. She just didn't give her the same jealousy waves as Julio did. So that's why Zulmira wasn't longing for Evelina to die. Her jealousy wasn't triggered by Evelina as hard. So anyway, they're headed to the beach, and I think it is Evelina and her father are heading out in a boat, and they're leaving Zulmira and Julio behind. And Zulmira is thinking more and more, oh, this could be my moment, and maybe I should be looking in a different direction. And so she walked away from the beach, and sure enough, little Julio starts playing, and one wave washes him away. She could have easily run and saved the boy, but she chose not to. And this is really important. She chose not to. And the minute the boy was washed away, that's when she woke up and she started crying for the boy, screaming. And then his dad came, Amaro came, and found the boy, and he was lifeless. He had discarnated. And this is when the whole drama started, because now, of course, Odila observed this whole drama, that her son was, died in the sea. And Zulmira is starting to feel repentance. She's suddenly gripped by remorse. Now let us pause for a moment, because we're seeing, we're wondering, so now this obsessive situation is going on between Odila and Zulmira. And at the same time, she did not actually kill the boy, but she created all these mental images. Now, how can that be? Now, when we go back, or we step back one step, and we're remembering the Spirit's book, in question 456, Allan Kardec is wondering, how is the relationship between spirits and us incarnates? Do spirits actually have impact on our lives? And the answer is yes, they do, very much more so than we actually can imagine. Spirits see everything, and particularly whatever they put their focus on, they are aware, they are with us. Whatever we're emanating, that's what we're attracting. So, and then in question 457, we learned that the spirits even see our most intimate thoughts. So now we're remembering Zulmira and Odila, right? So everything was already clear to Odila of what was going on in Zulmira's thoughts. And then in question 459, we're learning that, as we already mentioned, the spirit influence on us incarnates is much bigger than we can even imagine. And they often, frequently even guide us. So when we then jump to the law of freedom in the Spirit's book, and there we find question 833, which will allow us to understand that, yes, we do have freedom of thought. Allan Kardec is wondering, is there something in human beings which escapes all constraint? And the answer is yes, it is through thought. That we enjoy unlimited freedom because for thought knows no obstacles. Then in question 834, are humans responsible for their thoughts? And of course, that is equally important, if not a more important question, because yes, we have freedom of thought. So Mira was free to have thoughts, but there are consequences, even in our thoughts. And this is what's really important. The answer is yes, spirits are responsible before God. And that helps us to understand that before the human law, which is not as perfect as God's laws, Zulmira will escape punishment. However, she cannot escape the consequences, the effects of her repetitive thinking, her repetitive thoughts of wanting this little boy to die. She cannot escape God's law. God alone can know spirit's thoughts and condemn or absolve them according to divine justice. Well, divine justice works without fail in absolutely precision, and it is the law of cause and effect. So whatever we're thinking, whatever we're feeling, is absolutely the effect we will be experiencing. Now, how is that? How can that be that we will be even feeling the effects of every thought? Well, there is a scientific explanation. And we find that in Genesis, believe it or not, chapter 14, the fluids. It's on page 291 in case you're interested. And here is the absolute clear explanation for us why it is that every thought gets recorded. Here we learn that the fluids that we are made out of, universal cosmic fluid that we are swimming in, that is everywhere, in, around, through us, the fluid, universal cosmic fluid, is the divine plasma. So consequently, since the fluids are the vehicle of thought, we create fluidic images with every thought we have. And these fluidic images, so in Zulmira's case, those thoughts of little Julio she wanted him to be dead, these thoughts are reflected in our peri-spiritual envelope. So we're thinking, and the thought gets reflected in like a mirror in our peri-spiritual envelope. And there it takes on a body, like a photograph that is reflected back into our peri-spirit. And then what's so interesting and fascinating is that Allan Kardec actually gives us a similar example that we find in our chapter 4. He says, suppose that a certain person, for example, gets the idea to kill another. And then he says, as impassive as his physical body may be, his fluidic body goes into action, right? So here the thoughts via the peri-spirit go into action. And then he says, by means of the thought, which reproduces all the nuances of this desire to kill or see somebody dead, it fluidically executes the motion, the act that he has the desire to accomplish. And the thought creates the image of the victim, and the entire scenario is painted like a picture just as it exists in his mind. Wow. And that is what Zulmira did. So this is how the most secret movement of the soul reverberates in the fluidic envelope, namely our peri-spirit. How one soul can read another soul. And this is exactly what happened. Odila was reading all the thoughts that built up to that moment when it was actually executed. Now, Zulmira didn't do it with her own hands. She allowed the ocean to do it. But before God, she's guilty. She carries the responsibility. Right, Carol?
Yes, Sunshine, right on. Thank you so much for bringing us such wonderful, soul nourishing food for thought. And the fact that you brought in Genesis, Sunshine, explaining to us that our thoughts are literally brought to life because they are of electromagnetic nature. Uh, Leads us to understand that any process of persistent negative influence by another spirit, in this case, the discarnate spirit of Odila, negatively and persistently influencing Zumira, starts with a self-obsession. What is a self-obsession? It's a time when we ourselves, inside of our very own mental dwelling here, cultivate seeds of negativity and allow them to blossom. How do we know that this was the case with Zumira? Because of jealousy. Jealousy, the sentiment that is like harsh and poisonous because it is based on selfishness, led her to constantly be thinking like we could almost envision the wheels going around her brain. I wish this would happen. I wish this would happen. I wish this would happen. And because we are immersed in this fluid and our thoughts are recorded, her intention actually materialized. As Rihanna is saying, is it Rihanna? That the intention is what really counts. Exactly. Her intention was to eliminate the physical life of Julio, and that is what guided her to that moment with that thought and the guilt feeling. But let's break it down once again so we understand how the process begins. The process does not begin with a discarnate spirit or an incarnate spirit hammering negative thoughts or feelings onto us. Because if this were such, then we would be constant victims. But there aren't such a thing as victims in God's beautiful universe. Because we are all children of God, so we were not created to be victims. We were created to be co-creators. So we learned then that it wasn't Odila that pushed her, Zumira, and it wasn't anyone else that pushed her. It was her decision to cultivate self-centered feelings that opened a door, that created poisonous soil in the depths of her soul. Oh, goodness, what if we have self-centered thoughts? Have we ever wished that that coworker would, quote unquote, disappear? Or that relative that pushes our button? Have we ever thought, ooh, it would be so nice if that X, Y, and Z person would disappear? Or if a relationship breaks, do we ever think, ooh, my life, our lives would be so much easier if that person just magically disappeared? Or do we sometimes wish that we would disappear so that we wouldn't face the challenges that come our way? If we have such a set of feelings, it is time for us to put God thermometers on and take our temperature because we are having selfishness fever. And we need to take a remedy, and the remedy is God's love. We are being invited by the mentors of Kardec Radio to remind ourselves that no one disappears in God's universe, that everyone is created to move towards love. And if someone whom we know fails to recognize God's love, or if we fail, it's because we are still being trained to seek the good, to visualize the good, to feel the good, and to mold the good. So, what is the antibody? What is the vaccine that we may take against the pandemic of jealousy that may be going around, the pandemic of envy, an emotional pandemic to go with the physical one? What is the vaccine that we may take? We may take the vaccine of goodness, seeking the good. So when we have a thought, oh, we wish we would disappear, or we wish that neighbor would disappear, or that coworker would disappear, or that relative would disappear, we just make a point of seeking the good about that person. So instead of enumerating the qualities that irritate us, we are being invited by the mentors of Kardec Radio to enumerate the good qualities of that person. Because that person is a child of God, and God loves that person exactly as God loves us, and loves Jesus, and loves the worm, and loves our little pet, and loves the flowers in our garden. So we are being called to be visualizers of God's love, to be researchers of God's love, to be spreaders of God's love, to be believers in God's love. And it all starts within our mental landscape. And Rihanna is saying in the book Thought and Life, chapter 9, suggestions, it says that we are responsible for our relationships with positive forces or with the forces of disorder and evil. Exactly. Rihanna, beautiful teamwork effort here. You are so right. Emmanuel teaches us, as always, to take responsibility for what we offer to one another, for the quality of our relationships. And often that very characteristic in that person that quote unquote annoys us is the very characteristic that we likely taught them in previous lives. So now we are facing the effect of our own past choices. Emmanuel explains how this process works also in the book Thought and Life, when he says that from the cradle, when we reincarnate, we are immersed in our own mental reflexes. So if we have that relative, that partner that pushes our button, we better come to believe by reading the book Thought and Life, thank you, Rihanna, that there is mathematical reincarnatory logic to that, and that often we are the ones who taught that relative that particular quote unquote annoying characteristic, and they are back with us so that we can um, set things differently, that so that we can learn new ways of relating to one another. If Zulmira had made this choice, she wouldn't be in such dire straits as she finds herself now. But then again, she probably did not read the book Thought and Life. For those of us who have, we are more responsible, right, Sunshine, for the feelings and thoughts that we emit, because every feeling and every thought is charged with living energy that contributes to the vibratory ambience of all of those around us, incarnate and discarnate alike. Right, Sunshine?
Exactly, Carol. That's the importance of us becoming the observers of our thoughts and
Yes.
remembering whatever annoys us in others. When you spot it, you've got it.
I love that. I'm going to write that down. Would you allow me to write that down, Sunshine? Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Carol. So then, we see Zulmira suffering, and Clarencio helps us understand. He says, at that moment when Julia was washed away, that is when Zulmira was overcome with repentance and tormented by guilt. She descended in spirit to the vibratory level of Odila, who, repulsed, had silently been watching her. If she had been able to maintain peace of conscience, he says, she could have defended herself against the unseen onslaught by Odila as if she were living in a fortified castle. So let us pause, because there's two different aspects that we're being asked to look at. One is the power of guilt, and the other one is how can we defend ourselves from the onslaught of a so-called evil spirit. How is that working? Because Odila, of course, was watching her, and boom, it snapped, and the two went into this dynamic. So guilt. What is wrong with guilt? Will do something wrong, and isn't it natural to feel guilt? And the answer is yes. And guilt can really serve us because it will help us to alert ourselves to our conscience, which God's laws are written in our conscience. But if we indulge in repetitive and strong feelings of guilt and don't take the next steps to remedy it, then what happens? First of all, why do we feel guilt? Number one, main reason is because we have not fulfilled our duty. In the case of Zulmira, her duty was to take care of little Giulio and not look the other way and allow him to go closer to the ocean. Our duty is in every day, every step of the way. We have duties to fulfill. The definition of duty, actually, that Emmanuel gives us in Thought and Life is it's a string of activities in the realm of goodness. We fulfill our daily good duties by doing the good. We're not cutting corners. We're not running away. We're not medicating. We are staying in every moment, present, fulfilling whatever appears. That may be from work, family, whatever it may be. Taking care of little Giulio. So when we do not fulfill our duties, what happens? Guilt comes up. Now, when we feel guilt, what happens? In our bodies, in our perispirit, it leads to remorse, which is exactly what Zulmira is feeling. And these are items of Emmanuel from the chapter on guilt in Thought and Life that we're mentioning as a reminder. Emmanuel teaches us that guilt activates the infiltration of darkness. Right at that moment, we're opening the gate, and Carol said it already, to negative spirits, to those who vibrate exactly on the vibration we are emanating. In this case, in Zulmira and Odila's case, it's Odila. She's just right. It's like a Lego piece that fits right in the groove. Then it drips poison into our thoughts. It's perpetuating even more darkness. We're starting a cycle, a circle. And what does it drip? It drips poisonous thoughts, then negative thoughts, depressing images. And eventually those guilty, remorseful, depressing images form, of course, in our perispirit and eventually lead us to get sick. Then we come down with complicated illnesses that Western medicine often can't even deal with. They don't have an answer. I'm sure we've all experienced it. And ultimately, we have a partial physical, emotional, mental collapse. So what is the remedy? If in the moment guilt comes up and it wakes us up, okay, I've done something wrong. Let me repent and let me make up for it, right? We don't want to open the door to poisonous spirits now to attach themselves to us. Well, number one ingredient for success is humility. We humble ourselves and we reconcile. Jesus taught us from the get-go that we ought to reconcile with our brothers and sisters, particularly as long as we walk on the earth incarnated. It's seizing the moment. It's not kicking the can down the road and waiting for later on because nobody pinches us in the moment. No, we're seeing the effects of guilt in Emmanuel's chapter. We see it in the André Luiz series. We see it everywhere. The Spirit's telling us, don't indulge. Go to the remedy. Practice humility. Make up for the past wrongs. Reconcile. And then, of course, lastly, but not leastly, forgiveness. Let us practice forgiveness. Self-forgiveness, very important as well, but also forgiveness for the others. So those are the three main steps that we can take right now if we have any feelings of guilt. So we're invited to look inside and ask ourselves, do I feel guilty? Am I being prone to feeling? I'm prone to feeling guilty? And then let us go right to humbling ourselves, reconciling, and forgiving. Right, Carol? I also wanted to talk about the repelling of evil spirits, but maybe we can hold off and talk about more guilt first.
Yes, this is very needed because who on earth does not have this feeling, right? We are just learning, in the process of learning how to make wiser choices in from the perspective of life eternal. So of course we come into this beautiful school of trials and expiations with guilt in our record. If we looked at our immortal record, we would see instances of guilt written down all over. Probably just look at history of humanity and we recognize ourselves there, and we know that guilt is a common feeling in a planet of the nature of the earth. But let us follow the therapeutics that sunshine presented to us, and also look at the master as our model. When he had the encounter with Mary Magdalene, where everyone was getting ready to literally stone her to death, what did he do? He welcomed her. He embraced her. In the book Good News by the Spirit Humberto de Campos, through the mediumship of Chico Xavier, we know that Master Jesus empowered her. Master Jesus, when she said to him, I have seen, I have no future, I don't know what to do with myself, I don't have hope. Master Jesus presented her with a beautiful regenerative plan. She said, I want to change my life. And Master Jesus responded, yes, I believe in you. Master Jesus didn't give her a laundry list of everything that she did, quote unquote, wrong. He responded, I believe in you. Then she said, I would love to now have a family, but I can no longer have children of my own. And Master Jesus responds, isn't there merit to a woman who embraces the children of others? So go and embrace your universal family. So we see in this dialogue, and we invite our beloved friends to watch Dr. Vanessa Celoni's podcasts on the book Good News, available right here on Kardec Radio, because we see how Master Jesus helps us to deal with guilt by using positive psychology. 2,000 years ago, Mary Magdalene comes with a problem, an impediment, saying, I can't. And Master Jesus is responding, yes, you can. So let us visualize our very encounter with the Master as a remedy for our souls, and let us speak to him and hear his soothing voice saying, yes, you can. You are reincarnated because God believes in you. And when we hear that voice, because all of us who are trying to better ourselves find impediments, including spiritual impediments. Zumira is not the only one. So when we hear the voice, oh, you're not good enough. Oh, you don't know what you're doing. Oh, I saw what you did last week. Come on, you better give up. Then, as Sunshine recommended, we take the pill of humility and we say, yes, we made a mistake, you're right, dear spirit friend, and yes, we will continue to make mistakes, and yes, we are very imperfect still, but we are learning. Would you like to learn as well? We can learn together.
Yeah.
So if we turn the guilt trip into an opportunity to learn, then we are giving potentially not only ourselves the remedy, but the discarnate brothers and sisters the remedy. Perhaps they are with us because God is calling us to be of use to them. So today is Halloween in the United States of America, and we often, as a culture, tend to think of scary ghosts and scary movies and being hunted and persecuted by them. But we know in Spiritism that there's no persecution per se in any realm. And if God allows the connection to take place between an incarnate and a discarnate, instead of us wanting to shoo the discarnate spirits away, why not being of service to them? Why not shift the mentality? We in Spiritism talk about obsessors as if they were not children of God. How about if we reverse that and we said, this spirit is also our brother and sister. Let us invite them to come along and learn. Why not? Let us divest ourselves of this frightening relationship that we tend to have with the spirits that are on a different page than ourselves and invite them to learn with us, because it's not by chance that we are attracted to them, right, Sunshine?
Yes, yeah. You're speaking to a very important subject. Is okay, so we are opening the door, but how can we shift it, or how can we protect
Exactly.
it? What can we do
Mhm.
or we're not? What could Zulmira have done to not attract Odila? And
Thank you.
right,
Exactly. Yes,
right,
Sunshine.
yeah.
Mhm.
And again, we have the answer thanks to Allan Kardec in Genesis.
Yes.
Right? It's in chapter 14, again, the fluid chapter, which is such a very rich study, which explains really pretty much everything that is connected to our connection to spirit, to the spirit world. And it's so chapter 14 in Genesis, entitled Fluids. It's item 21, in case you're interested to read it, on page 295. And there, Allan Kardec answers a question. And the question is, how can we avoid the influence of the evil spirits who swarm around us and intrude everywhere without being seen? And that's exactly what we're talking about. And here is the answer. It's actually very simple. He says the way to do so is quite simple. And we like that. We want simple. That means we can do it, right? Because it depends on what? It depends on our will. So again, that's, of course, the will is the boss of our mind, of all the departments of our mind, which Emmanuel so beautifully explains to us. So that means, okay, good, I have willpower, I can deal with it. So now he helps us to understand more. So main ingredients is our will. Fluids are combined due to the similarity of their nature. Makes sense, right? Same attracts same. Dissimilar fluids repel one another. And we already seeing the answer, right? So there is incompatibility between good and bad fluids, just as there is between water and oil. So the good spirits repel the bad spirits, because just like water and oil, they just don't go together. I mean, we all know how the oil swims on top of the water. It never mingles. It never becomes one with the water. And this is exactly what's happening with our thoughts, our fluidic images, with what we're emanating. So then he says the invasion of deleterious fluids, so toxic fluids, must therefore be opposed with good fluids. And since we all have in our own perispirit a permanent fluidic source, we have the remedy within us. Wow. So here we are. We have the will as ingredient number 1. Ingredient number 2 is knowing that good and bad repel each other, like oil and water. And we have our own fluidic envelope, which we can so-called impregnate either with deleterious fluidic images, or we can impregnate it with loving, kind, God-filled images. And of course, clearly now we know like attracts like. If we are living a God-centered life, there is our remedy in our perispirit. We can't attract evil spirits if we're not emanating so-called evil thoughts, unconscious thoughts. So then he says, the perispirit is therefore the armor that must be given the best possible caliber. The qualities of the perispirit result from the qualities of our souls. It is necessary to work on improving it, because it is the soul's imperfections that attract evil spirits, just like flies get attracted to we know what. Bottom line, truly good spirits, whether incarnate or discarnate, have nothing to fear from the influence of evil spirits. This is good news, dear friends. This is really, there is the mechanism of what Zulmira could have done. If she had indulged in positive, loving, kind thoughts towards her husband Amaro, with understanding for his love for little Giulio, she would have never, Odila's jealousy of Zulmira would have not been able to get to her, because good and bad fluids repel each other. However, she opened her door through her jealousy and death wish on Giulio to attract Odila, who was vibrating on the same negative emotion of jealousy of Zulmira, being the woman of her house now. And that is this is our answer. There is our remedy. It's in our perispirit. So we never need to be, even on Halloween, we don't have to be scared of the so-called evil spirits, because we have the remedy, our perispirit, the quality of our thoughts, the quality of our soul. Isn't it beautiful, Carol?
Oh my goodness, this is so empowering to know that. Thank you to Allan Kardec and to you for bringing it to our attention, Sunshine. Absolutely beautiful. So, if we could use yet another analogy, it's like our mind is filled with outlets. And whatever those outlets vibrate according to the quality of our feelings and thoughts, there will be other feelings and thoughts from other minds that will plug into it. So why did why did Odila, quote unquote, plug into Zulmira's mental outlets? Because jealousy intertwines with more jealousy. However, as Allan Kardec and Sunshine explained, if Zulmira were vibrating higher, Odila would not have found an outlet to intertwine mentally with her. So we all have the opportunity to plug into the loving spirits, the ones that are constantly rooting, cheering for our evolution. In question 495 of the Spirit's book by Allan Kardec, we learn that all of us have devoted spirits watching and caring for us, waiting for us to vibrate higher so they can plug in into our mental outlets. And in this particular question, St. Augustine and St. Luiz explain that our guardian angels or mentor spirits are so eager to support us that they actually become exhilarated when we ask them questions, when we ask them for support. St. Augustine is so sweet in that response that he says, "Be not afraid that you will bother us, because we are never bothered by you." So isn't it beautiful, dear friends, knowing that we have a family of loving spirits that is constantly ready and willing to connect with us. The question is, have we made the choice to connect with them? Because we all have the fluidic outlets. The question is, which direction are they pointing towards? Upwards or downwards? It is our choice. How do we know? Because as Sunshine explained, the will, our will, not somebody else's will guide us towards one direction or another. Attunement is an unbreakable law. Yes,
Yeah.
Rihanna, thank you.
Yeah.
Again, beautiful teamwork effort. Yes, it's unbreakable. It's in our spiritual DNA. God created us this way for us to connect with one another. That law of connection, mental connection, as Rihanna points out, is unbreakable. So which Wi-Fi, speaking in modern terms, another central question for us to meditate upon is, which Wi-Fi are we logging into? The Wi-Fi of the mentor spirits who are eagerly ready to inspire us, or the Wi-Fi of suffering spirits because we are feeling heavy feelings as they are? If we are going towards the direction of the loving spirits, the suffering spirits, we already know that we can shift and that the shift is within us. So today we are definitely being empowered by the mentors, right, Sunshine?
Yes, we are. It feels so good, doesn't it?
Yes, it
We're
does.
never victims. That is really the bottom
Exactly.
line message. It's always,
Exactly.
everything is in our power. We just have to make use of the tool.
Yes.
To remember the tools in our tool belt, right?
Yes. Thank you, Sunshine.
So then Andre Louise is still wondering, so is Sulmira then actually guilty before the law?
Good question,
right?
as always. Yes.
Right. And it's a twofold answer. First of all, no, not in the real sense of the law, because she actually did not per se with her own hands murder Giulio, but as we know, she created enough of a stage in her mental emanations to do that. So then the answer is linked to, of course, we're responsible. We mentioned that earlier when we started this program. We are responsible for our thoughts because God's law of cause and effect is always in effect. And including, even though we have freedom of thought, we are responsible for our thoughts. And in question 975 in the Spirit's book, we learn that there's a threefold responsibility we carry for our acts, but also for our thoughts. And then it starts always with our thoughts and feelings, right? Number one, yes, we are guilty for all the evil thoughts and acts we emit or commit. We're responsible for them. Law of cause and effect, like a seed we put into our garden of eternity. And once it's in there, it'll sprout. We can't take it back out. Not in this case. And so number 2 is we're also responsible for all the good we don't do. Now we're responsible if we're so-called idling, which it's not really idling because we're learning that even if we're so-called neutral and not doing anything, we're not doing the good. And then we're responsible for those missed opportunities, even in our thoughts. And then lastly, we're responsible also for all the evil that results from all the good we omitted doing, or we forgot to do, or didn't want to do. So the stakes are really high. The stakes for our personal responsibility are huge. And it's in chapter 1 where actually Minister Clarencio speaks to responsibility, says, we're all masters of our own creation, he says. Let us ask and receive, but let us bear in mind that we must pay for everything we get. Responsibility is the divine principle that no one can escape. So Mira was asking for Giulio to die. And she got it. But now, of course, she has to pay for those thoughts. And it's not the human law that's going to catch her, so to speak, but God's law will. And as an aside, and not maybe as an aside, but a very important piece of information, Giulio was destined to die young. So, of course, Mira is not aware of that. So Giulio had reincarnated as a suicide, and that's important for us to know. So he suffered the result of his unfortunate choices in a previous incarnation, and he was meant to die. So we're saying, so now how can that be? But again, we're finding actually the answer in the Spirit's book, because question 853, let me see whether I can quickly pull it up. 853, Allan Kardec is wondering, there are persons who escape one moral danger only to fall into another. They seem unable to escape death. Isn't there fatalism in this? So the answer is, fatalism, in the true meaning of the word, applies only to the instant of death. So our moment of death, we cannot escape. Of course, we have the responsibility to take care of our lives. We can't be reckless. That's also built in us. That's also divine law of preservation. But at the same time, the moment of death is fixed. And then he says, Allan Kardec is wondering, then whatever may be the danger that threatens us, like in little Giulio, the ocean, we will not die if our hour has not come. Aha. So Mira let him go to the ocean, the edge of the ocean. Will he die? Would he have died if it wasn't his hour? No. So he died because it was his hour. And the answer here is no, you will not die. And you have thousands of examples. But when your hour for departure comes, nothing will save you. God knows beforehand what kind of death will cause your departure. And there's more. We're not going to read the whole answer. Just for us to understand that Giulio was destined to die because he was a suicide. He had a specific incarnation. We know from the book, Memoirs of a Suicide, of how there too, our actions, the decision to take our lives will lead to certain hardships in our incarnation, our next incarnation. However, Odila, who's vibrating on this jealousy and anger, how could Mira have done that, can't see that right now. She can't plug into this bigger picture. And that's also something that happens when we're vibrating on lower emotions and thoughts. We can't see the bigger picture. And then we get locked into this moment of obsession that these two are experiencing. Right, Carol?
Yes, Sunshine, absolutely right. And we know when we are vibrating at a lower level, if we are constantly visited by one single idea, as Odila and Zamira were. If we are in a loop, like a broken record, so to speak, that is a sign that we need help. that we need to read a constructive, inspiring book. We need to turn on Kardec radio. We need to dance to happy music, listen to the birds, meditate, go for a walk, talk to a loved one, because we need to direct our will towards a different landscape, mentally speaking. And speaking of mental landscape, Zumira's poisonous guilt was creating a prison, mental prison around her. This is why she was so connected to Odila. However, thank you, Sunshine. You brought up a very important piece of information that Julia was predestined to discarnate. And we may be wondering, is this God's punishment? No, because the death, the short reincarnation we learn in the memoirs of a suicide, is an opportunity for all of us to reconstruct our perispirit. So this is a therapeutic, almost medically prescribed reincarnation as a part of a treatment, almost like reconstructive surgery on a perispiritual level. I think I just invented a word here. Perispiritual level, so that we can reincarnate in greater harmony. So what seems to be punishment isn't punishment at all. So let us wear the divine providence glasses, so we no longer see punishment where punishment is not. And the second and final observation that we would like to share is that there is a movie that is made available to us with subtitles in English called The Mothers of Chico Xavier, where we see real life accounts of mothers who have physically lost their children tragically and sought Chico Xavier for support. And one particular mother who lost her child physically when the child was biking with the nanny goes to Chico Xavier and says, Chico, my husband and I, we are having a hard time forgiving the nanny. Then comes Emmanuel, and speaking through Chico Xavier, Emmanuel explains, your child was destined to lose his physical vest through a traumatic brain injury. It was God's mercy that he fell out of the bike while with the nanny, because this could have happened while you were holding him. Imagine the amount of guilt and sorrow that would have overcome you if the nanny had not been used as an instrument, and instead you had been an instrument yourself. How would you feel? Then the mother starts crying, and Emmanuel says, how about thanking the nanny so that she receives your gratitude for being an instrument of God's mercy, so that you as a mother would never have to carry this guilt. So we see God's providence, as Sunshine mentioned so many times today, working in the minute details of our lives. God is so perfect that God can predict how we will feel if a certain event takes place, and we then are protected on a level that we can't even imagine, right, Sunshine? God's mercy is all-encompassing, right?
Yeah, it is absolutely lovely to know
Yes.
that there is a loving eye watching us. And yes,
Yes.
there is law of cause and effect, but there's never any punishment. And we always, with God's mercy, always get another opportunity. And as we have learned today, we have all the power, we have all the tools to create and forge a better future for us.
Yes.
Every thought, of the way, every second, every thought we're thinking. And that is very consoling to know.
Yes, yes.
We can
So
work
we
on
thank you, dear friends, for the gift of your presence. Thank you, Sunshine, for those beautiful, so nourishing moments. And we will write the name of the book, the movie again on the comments after the program. And as Rihanna is saying, we can nourish our souls in this way and many more ways on Kardec Radio 2, available 24/7 for all of us to acquire knowledge for immortality, right, Sunshine?
to nourish our souls always. And God willing, we will meet you all again next week, same time, for the continuation of our study of Between Heaven and Earth by André Luiz. And we will be focusing on chapter 5. And the chapter is entitled An Invaluable Lesson. And we can barely wait.
Wow, can't wait. Yes, dear friends, we will see you next time, God willing. Many blessings and a big hug. Bye, friends.